When it comes to sharing the meaning behind your artwork or the process or why the work exists, how much should you share with the viewer? You don't want to share too much and spoil the experience and someone reading the artwork and having the feelings themselves, but yet you don't want the viewer to leave without feeling anything. So, how much do you share? What do you share? That's what I want to talk about in today's episode. This conversation actually came from our recent Make Art Your Living event, and Simon and Sonia inside our members hub were having a conversation on this very topic about how much to share. And I loved it. So I thought, right, I'm going to have to do a podcast on this because it's such a great conversation and there's no right or wrong. So when you create an artwork, we have been delving into why you make it. When you understand why you make it, you can understand more about how that relates to other artwork, what fires your passion, what artwork to make, how that connects to other people. And then also it helps you start to create stories because stories sell. You can start sharing stories about how that artwork came to be, what it means, why you created it. And then there's this line between what you share and what you don't share. And this comes really from you understanding more about yourself and what you're comfortable sharing, what feels right, and more about your who. When you start to understand who your people are, you'll start to become more intuitive around how to be in a conversation and how much to share. How much do they want to know? How much do they need to know? You'll maybe tailor it to different people when you're having a conversation. You'll become more aware around other people's experience with your own art the more you do this. There's only one way to do it, and that is to find out by trying. And don't worry about making mistakes. I think this is one of the things that people get really stuck with about you can overthink this by thinking, I don't want to give too much and then spoil the experience. I don't want to hold back. It's all about trying. And if you find that someone said, oh, that was too much, I now can't see the work in my own way, it doesn't matter. It's an experiment. You're trying things, and that's one person's opinion. So when you start to really feel what feels right to you and what feels right to your audience, and always sticking to your why. If you like sharing, but some people say, that puts me off, I don't like it. If that's part of what you like to do, they're not your who. If you find, actually, I don't like to share and I like the audience to really give me their interpretation of the work, they're your who. And that's what you should lean into. So this becomes a bit of trial and error between what you want, what your people want, and then joining, but never changing that part of yourself to try and please other people. Some people want to read the work, some people don't. Everyone is so different. So the more you understand your own mission with your work, what you want, and then balance that with what other people want and laser focus on those people and let everyone else go, that's the gold. That's the sweet spot. So in this, you look at Banksy. Banksy is a graffiti artist. We don't know who Banksy is. So in that situation, this artist is not giving the why and in the sense of talking to us about it and going, yeah, this is who I am, this is why I made it. But sharing, we know exactly what the mission is. We know the what through the artwork. We know what this work is about. But there is this air of mystery. There is parts of the process left behind to create this kind of like, oh, who is this person? Who is Banksy? And where is the next artwork going to be? And so there are definitely parts of your process, of your why, that you can hold back. So another example, let's think about music for a moment, because I love Freddie Mercury, I love Queen, but Freddie Mercury and Queen wrote Bohemian Rhapsody, one of the biggest hits of all time. And no one to this day knows why Freddie Mercury and the rest of Queen wrote that song and what it's about. They did not divulge the why. We don't know. We can guess from the lyrics and we can all chat about the why we've seen through Freddie Mercury's life and the interviews and his background. But again, there was this air of mystery. They did not want to divulge the meaning because they want you to listen to that song and have your own interpretation. And you can do the same for your art. The thing that happens when you do that, though, is you have to create that environment where people can have their own interpretation. Ask people. Simon was saying this, in fact, that when he had an exhibition recently, he got chatting to someone who was looking at the art. He didn't divulge any part of the why, and ask the viewer, what's your interpretation? How do you feel? How does the work make you feel? Be open to asking those questions. And for Simon, he got a really, really interesting response. And so this led Sonia to say something so beautiful about leaving artwork to breathe sometimes, that we don't always have to give the ins and outs of everything, that we can give some facilitation in the connection between an artwork, but it's really lovely to just let some artwork breathe, give it some space for other people to just give their own interpretation and their own reading of the artwork. Again, there's no right or wrong. George Ezra is a musician. He gives so much of his why. He'll stand on stage and talk about the music, and he'll talk about exactly where he was when he created it. He'll put even video footage of the place where he was, exactly why he created that song. It tells us the whole story, and we feel so connected to it. And that's what he likes to do. Again, for some people, maybe that impairs the experience of the music, but for a lot of people, it enhances the experience. There is no right or wrong. You have to find your own way in this and what feels right. I think there's definitely an area to go in between. So you share some parts, you leave some behind, you leave an air of mystery. If you find that someone is not quite getting the work, you can help facilitate that connection 100% by sharing about your story. You can also leave parts of the work a mystery, but still share about your intention as an artist, not specifically about that artwork. So you can still make a connection with people through your why without divulging the exact meaning behind an artwork. Now, it does depend on context as well, because if someone is seeing an artwork completely out of context, and there's no description, there's no connection, it goes back to, you've got to really think about where this artwork is being interacted with. And at the end of the day, some people hold back on saying anything because they don't want to spoil that relationship that the viewer has with the artwork. But if they're seeing it in isolation with no connection at all, you've got to be careful there that you're just not connecting at all, that people are just seeing your artwork in a sea of other people's artwork and there is no connection. That's where having something that stands out in relation to your story can be really helpful if it's on social media, for example. So Sharon's fawns, my friend Sharon, she has these little fawns. Sharon has created this whole connection with the fawns, why they exist. They've got their own little personalities, their character. People have started collecting these fawns now. So again, there's no right or wrong. Those fawns, Sharon shares so much, and they have a waiting list because people are so connected to them. And so I know some people don't want to share because of the loss of freedom, that sometimes if you share, then that other person then can't see the artwork in their own way because you've divulged the meaning and they can only see it in your way. But here's the thing, I believe with art, it changes all the time in terms of when we look at an artwork, the way I see your artwork today, for example, might change tomorrow. It might change in a week, because as people, we are always growing, evolving, learning, experiencing. So I, for example, might respond in an emotional way to a certain colour today. I might have a completely different experience next week with the colour red, for example, where I had negative connotations with the colour red. I didn't really like it, but all of a sudden I've won a hat which now symbolizes achievement and strength and power. And now I see red in a completely different way. And when I come back to your red artwork a month later, I might have a completely different feeling about that artwork. Not only that, so we're bringing our own feelings as viewers all the time. So that's why artwork changes. This is why it's so amazing, because we don't just see an artwork in isolation and then that's it. That's how it makes us feel forever. So if you divulge the meaning, that's it. It might be locked in someone's mind for a few days, but if they go back to it a week later, giving it some time and space, they'll make their own mind up. I'm sure of it. Everyone's different, of course. Some people maybe not. But the point is, the experience between a viewer and an artwork changes over time, depending on that viewer's experience and knowledge. And then every time I see an artwork, I learn more, because I'm now looking not from an emotional point of view, but I'm looking at the formal elements. I'm looking at the way lines come together. I'm looking at shapes. And so for me, when I look at an artwork and then I look a month later, once I've learned even more about viewing artwork and how it makes me feel, I see more. And you've probably noticed that sometimes, maybe you haven't, but maybe you put this on your radar now, that when you look at an artwork and you see it again and you see it again, when you really look and you keep looking, you see that artwork in a different way. See it in literally different lights, different angles. It will say something different to you on a different day, depending on how you're feeling. This is the power of art. It's incredible. And so remember that about your own art, that it's changing. The conversation is changing. So what you created it for and the meaning behind it, yes, has relevance. Yes, that can help facilitate a connection. But the viewer is always going to have their own individual response. And that response will change over time, which is why art is so amazing. And being open to that as well, that you can't control other people's view of your artwork. You can help facilitate connection, but you can't control the way someone else feels or responds to your artwork. And I guess that's what we do in critique sessions. We're going around groups. If you've ever been in a critique, if not, it's coming together as a group and having these conversations about how a work is constructed, what we can actually see, how it makes us feel. And when I go to a gallery with my friend Sharon, we'll look at the same artwork. We have a completely different view on that artwork and we talk about it. And when I hear Sharon's view, it actually makes me start to think, oh yeah, I'd not seen it in that way before. It doesn't hinder my view, it enhances. Um, and I like that. I like bouncing ideas and I like hearing how other people see artwork. For me, that isn't a hindrance, it's a deeper awareness of how other people see. And I'm like, ooh, that's interesting. So everyone, you probably maybe view artwork in a completely different way. We all have different ways. We're all unique. There we go. So that is my thoughts today. I'll be back next week for Motivational Monday again, and have a wonderful week. Take care. Bye bye.